What's going on, guys? This is your boy Parrot, the producer from the Genesis Network, and this is a special video because it's in response to a Reddit thread that I replied to earlier today about loops and kind of how to go from just a loop to more of a full-fledged project. And I felt passionate about that thread because I've been in that scenario so many times, and I'll even find myself in that scenario sometimes nowadays. And it ends up leading me to just close out projects because I can't get past kind of that loop phase. But in this video, I'll be showing you a project that went from that loop phase into more of a project that progressed more and more and more along the way. And you'll be able to see how I went from just this one loop with a lot of different layers and very convoluted down to different elements of that loop spread out throughout a song. Brought in, brought out, taken away, taken, put back in, filtered, automated, all that stuff. So let's jump into it. First, we'll start with just a few notes here. So a few things I got from that. Let me just bring my mic closer to a few things I got kind of off the top of my head after reading that thread are right here on my screen. So I'll just go over these real quick and then we'll kind of dive into the project. So first things first, loops are really good. They're oftentimes the building blocks of songs. As I mentioned, I create a song by at first starting with loops. That's kind of how everyone does it. And then it turns into something bigger. But this is not to say that really good loops are really good. So I say really good loops when you say I have a really good loop here. When you say that, it's really, you really do not have a really good loop. There is no really good loop. There's really good songs composed of good loops or just loops. But a really good loop isn't a song. And if you want to be a really good loop producer, go for it. I think there's so many sites you can put your loops up there and sell them or do whatever you want, splice and all that. But really good loops don't always lead to really good songs. Loops do. So in these really good loops, there's too much stuff going on to be the focus of an entire song. Songs are composed of the loop building block and by adding and taking away other elements, usually from these loops. So a really good loop, quote unquote, might only take place during one part of the song, or even just a few measures in a song. You're never going to have a really good loop playing throughout a whole song, or else you just have a really good loop. Second, so this is kind of just noting down what I saw from the threads. So I think the original poster said they made a really good loop, something that sounded really good, and they're probably just talking about a hook for their song. So it's good to keep in mind because you can end up using that hook later on for parts in the song. It's just good to keep track of that loop that you make because you'll probably use it later. Okay, so can't get the verses so I took another note. So they probably can't get the verses to jive with the hook. I think that's what they mentioned. There's probably, this is from just my observation, a lack of what I call thematic motifs being kind of crossed over throughout the song and used throughout the song and being kept track of. And we'll get into that, and that's kind of a big deal too. And you can disregard the next one, no background hook clips. It's kind of what I already mentioned. As for fills, so drum fills shouldn't be a huge issue. They're just found in somatics packs. I don't even think I have in this project many drum fills at all. It'd definitely be good to have them, but there's so many somatics packs out there and so many just different packs you can use for drum fills. It's not really a huge deal. Now, also filtering and EQ can help with these fills, and even getting away from using fills at all. You can just EQ and filter and things like that. But fills are still good, and we'll kind of get into all that as we go on. So first, I'll play here kind of an example of a loop that I probably started out with at one point. This was a while ago I made this, so I can't remember how it, what exactly was played first and how it built upon everything. But this is probably a good idea of where I was at one point with this song. So let's make sure this isn't too loud. Out of it. And I was probably playing something like this over and over. Maybe it was just this. So that's just an idea of kind of a loop where you have a lot going on, and when you're faced with something like this, like if I already make this right away and just hear myself like, how could I possibly do anything more than that throughout the song? Like, that's so much going on all at once. And I think that's the biggest issue that some producers will fall into. They'll hear this, it sounds really good, you're taking up a lot of different frequencies, but then it's like, okay, now how do I continue to do that throughout the entire song? Well, the question is, you're not going to. And you shouldn't be doing it to begin with either. It's really about breaking all these parts down and placing them throughout the song. But then you might wonder, okay, well, if I just have, say, this playing at one point in the song. So let's listen to this. Very dry. Or maybe not dry, it has some reverb, but like, you're not covering much. Can't just be on its own, really. I say, okay, maybe I will just have to add my bass in there as well with it. Console that, all these down. Maybe I just need my bass in there as well. Close these real quick. So you're like, okay, my bass and my rhythm. Play it one more time. Better. And now, that's only a really high frequency bass because I have the filter there in place because I copied it from there. But you get the idea. Sounds a bit wider. Things are covering more frequencies. But again, can't just be on its own. So then I guess our next logical answer would be, okay, then just add in another thing. And this is kind of like the whole loop process, how it kind of progresses. You're like, okay, I guess I got to put in an ARP in there to cover more frequencies. Let's play this. Great. So now we're at the point where we're covering a lot, the high frequencies, mid frequencies, lower frequencies. But again, we're faced with that question of, well, I can't keep this going throughout the entire song because then I'm just going to have one really good loop, as we called it. So let's take a look at how I went about breaking this down and how I went about using filters and other tech in Ableton. And this can, again, all this stuff that you're going to hear can be used in FL Studio, anything. It's just all different names in that software. If you guys want an FL tutorial, I actually started on FL for 6 years, and then past 6 months moved to Ableton. I never looked back. So if you're interested in trying another DAW, definitely look into Ableton. It's awesome. I prefer it over FL at this point, but FL, you can do everything I've done in here on FL just as easily. Well, I like to say not as easily, but you can do it just as well as you can in Ableton. So let's listen to what the actual song sounds like. I'll play it all the way through real quick. We'll start here. Everything is unmuted. Now see if you can pick out the parts that we played earlier in here. So I'll play this one more time. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Re-enable. Okay, one more time. Okay, you get the idea. Now let's listen to the entire song. Let's look for parts that we played in that loop and kind of decipher how we went about moving things around and placing things in certain places. Okay, so we're lead melody, rhythm we're playing. Introduce the ARP. Introduce the drums. And that middle synth as well. That's all that's playing right now. Nothing else. I'm gonna cut off the lead here. important. That's an important step. Keep these in mind. Very important. Got everything out here on the drop. Support bass. Back to the lead melody, different melody this time. All it's playing is our bass, lead melody, and just that sweep that was down here. And now we're bringing this back in. Second drop, want it to be a bit different. Bring everything back in. Second round, we'll use that support bass as well. It's different melody this time for the support chords. Alone. Bring the ARP in. Just alone. Different ARP melody. Back to our lead. To the outro. Just drums, took away the hi-hats. Sweep down. And then this, I just filtered this out, I think, with the track volume. So, that is what the whole song sounds like, and I'll play this one more time. Our original loop sounded like this, remember. Now, what's interesting is that now that you hear that, you're like, oh wait, I heard that loop, but I probably heard it all together like once throughout the song, and that's the point. You're probably making really, really big loop, or like really good loops. It's just we only play them once in the song because they're like the high point in the song. So getting that like perfect loop is a good sign. It means like you have like the climax in the song. It's just you gotta filter things out and put things in, bring things out. So let's kind of dive into how I went about. We'll go into structuring. So here, I'll write it down here. So I think an easy one to just view and doesn't take too much research in terms of music theory is just the structuring of the song. So we'll go into first, we'll look at the song structuring, maybe go into steps taken during the creation in terms of like, let's do this. Order of steps taken, so you know kind of which sounds I've started with. Then we can do just a bit of music theory. Very simple music theory. Like 2 rules you need to remember in terms of like melodies. And now what's really cool about this project is if you look, there's the only chords. I don't even have chords here. I mean, I have this ARP, but nothing is like, no notes are stacked on top of each other. Sure, some of them might be in a single chord, but if you look, I mean, even these, like, I just have the supporting D note down here, and then everything else is just a step above or below in the same key. I think I used all the white keys in this project, which is pretty neat too, because sometimes I'll like to work in others, like sharps or flats or whatever, but this just use all the white keys, so you can easily do this. And I do plan to put the project file in the description so you guys can download this, check this out. I think it just requires Serum and maybe like Valhalla Room Reverb, possibly. But before I get into that, please, if you're still following this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'm definitely trying to get more of this content out there because I know I struggled with a lot of this for a while. So it was really videos like these that kind of helped me progress and get to the point where I can like make kind of full-fledged projects. And this is by no means like, I still say it's not even a finished song, but this is like one of the cooler projects I was working on. So let's dive into like the beginning of this. So I want to say what I really started out with here was probably this loop right here. We take a look at it. So what I did here, let's take a loop at this one because this one's a bit different. As you can tell, the beginning's kind of cut off. So it looks like I started with this. It's a 32 bar loop, even though it's probably 8. I just ended up consolidating it. Now, if you're not familiar, I don't want to get into all like kind of the beginner stuff, but consolidating is just, so I have this notch here. It means if I were to take it this way and that way, you see how we have more notches, it's repeating. Consolidating is as if those are all there, but I wanted to make it its own clip, so I just consolidate. And you may want to do this because for longer loops like this, you may want some variation on like the last measure here or something. So you don't want like repeating ones. You want to consolidate the whole thing to a 32 bar or 32, I don't know if it's a bar or not, 32 length, call it that, MIDI clip where you change something at the end rather than repeating. So I probably made this first. Let's take a listen to this. So again, as I mentioned, I just started with a D here and just went G, F, whatever sounded good, G, F, A. That's how I would start, really. Just put some random notes, see what it sounds like. I generally, and now also I'm working at 176 BPM. I find that drum and bass is just easier for me to make because the drum patterns are just so simple in drum and bass. It's just boom, psh, boom, psh, boom, psh. Where other songs, you kind of have to focus more on the percussion. I mean, you can in drum and bass, and it'd sound a lot better. And if I were to do more with it, it'd sound way better too. But it's very easy in drum and bass, I feel like, to just get that beat down, throw in some hats, and you have yourself like a drum line for a song. So again, start with just D, 1, 2, 3, and then just put random notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 4, 8 per measure here. Let's listen. Very simple. I actually want to say that it's a bit different than, yeah, so I think that loop is actually even different from this one, where this one, if you actually listen, it kind of starts a bit sooner. I think I just overlooked this in the project, but listen to this. It starts a bit sooner. So you can see these two kind of just start before that like main line there. I think that's the only one that does that. And I just like was so caught up in all the other stuff that I didn't really get to it and notice. But now let's see kind of how I introduce this song, starting with that. So I went, yeah, we'll just play from the beginning. So I want to start the song. I like to separate it, kind of the progression. I started with like 8 going up to 9 here, so 8 bars or 8 measures, whatever it's called. Bars, I'm not even sure. Just bear with me. Started like this, and this is kind of just the intro, not introducing too much. We'll ramp it up with this melody, or kind of this rhythm as we progress. There's no issue with starting with small amount. Remember, keep it simple, and then build up to it. So let's just listen how it starts without soloing this. It's just that D hitting. So it starts out by introducing really the lead melody here. So I think this was the second thing. This would be a good segue into the lead melody. I'll actually move this up because the ARP is something I actually made last in the song because I needed a bit more like higher frequencies hit on. So our lead melody here, probably sounded like this. We'll just play these two. Actually, we could just start from here. Wait, actually, I wonder if I can do this. Can, okay. So it probably sounded like this when I was first starting. Oh, okay, so the beginning I remember is so I did a few different things here in the beginning, but anyways, the second step in all this after making kind of this simple rhythm is just come up with a melody. And now the question that was on Reddit was, how do I go about making kind of loops where the two melodies can kind of like mesh together? When I'm working in C and I'm working with the white keys, so what I like to do, and I wish I could go back to it and see, I'll usually take the notes here, I'll copy them, and I'll say say I wasn't there, I'll put them into here so to see what notes I used, and then I'll make the melody in here using the notes that I used in the rhythm. So rather than having all these notes in place for this and playing the exact same thing, I will take them out. And I mean, these notes probably aren't even using just those notes, but I'll go into that too, because I'll show you. So I'll probably use, say, D, F, G, and A. So I probably use D, F, G, and A here. D. I didn't use F because I was using E, and sometimes E and F don't agree very well together, I felt like, with a melody, or I guess on the same Serum instance. And I'm not going to get into how I made this melody, or actually I can get into some of that theory, but I'll get to that later on because that could be a bit more in depth in terms of the music theory part of it. But again, your best bet is just put some random notes down, whatever sounds good to you, just let it go. Just let it run free. So, okay, so D, F, G, and A. Back to here. D. Not using F. D. We use C. We used A, and we used G here. Okay. So no C was in here, and that's okay, because we don't want to use every note in just the rhythm. That's why it's the rhythm. We're not trying to cover every single note that we can. But a good thing to keep in mind when creating like a melody like this, I like to stick within these notes, and then you'll find that, so this is kind of where the music theory comes in. You'll find that if I were to make a minor chord, so all a minor chord is if you start with, say, D, and then we go 1, 2, 3, so the minor chord would be D, F, so 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. DFA. That would be the minor chord. Now you would say the major chord would be where the F is one step up, but it's F sharp, and F sharp's not in the key, so there's no. I mean, there is a D major, but I don't think in the key of C there is a D major key because there's no F sharp in the key of C. That's all music theory. It's worth looking into that though, and just understanding minor and major chords, and just learn the key of C and what chords are in it. It's very helpful. But going back to just like going from a loop to a song, so rather than having this all loop together like we did here with all the drums and stuff, we actually started the song, the first 2 sets of bars here, with just the lead and just that D playing. Introduce that, and now what's coming up here is how we're going to progress even further, but not with notes. See how it kind of jumps up in power there, because we're kind of introducing the song, and you can't hear it. I didn't have the drums soloed as well, but the drums are introduced there as well, and they're very punchy. So let's take a look at what happened here. So you go to our melody, And I won't go into the sound design. I can make another video on how I design all these sounds, but this is how it looks right now. We got just a reverb macro, hyperdimension, just got some effects on it. Yeah. Now all we did here was, let's look at our automation. So we brought it from low to high. So I like introducing the song with going for, like, lowering the volume, increasing it, and then once you hit a certain point, just going back to 0 decibels. So we'll go back to, I probably messed with the track panning too. Well, let's look at our Serum, what we did here. So probably a filter cutoff we mess with. So this filter was controlling a cutoff here. It's a low filter, low pass filter. So as we brought it up, we allowed in more of the high frequencies, which is where a lot of this sound, like, lived. So we brought in that punch that we wanted. And again, we didn't have to do any crazy addition of sounds or anything. We just covered some time in a song that we're making by introducing like new frequencies by just automating the filter. So we went from here to there, and it sounds like a lot more homey. That's how I felt about it. Let's bring in the drums here. See what the drums sound like with it. Okay. So I'm gonna actually move the drums up for you guys so we can, because the drums were one of the first things I did as well. So kind of reordering things here, but make a lot more sense as we go on. And it'll be easier to look at for everyone. Once you guys have the project file, it'd be a lot easier for you to work. So the drums were another thing I worked on. At first, it was just look like this. This is what the drums sounded like. Off. Kind of like this. So, and one way to get away from just a loop of drums that seems to be never ending or never changing, we did a few things here. So first I started with my bass drum, and if you guys want to look at just the effects I have, Valhalla room, fab filter, I eventually used, I'm pretty sure I'm just automating the device being on and off. Drum bus, really good, adds that, like when you hear the kick, so that like kind of deep boost sound is from the kick boost. And this just makes your drums louder. Can't go wrong with that. Makes them, just like brings them to the right level. But that's for another video, just all the effects. We're gonna try to dive into more of like the composition part of it here. So yeah, next thing I did was the drums. Let's just take a look at this amount. We're just gonna look at all of this here. So I started with just your generic boom, psh, boom, psh, boom, psh, boom, psh. Kind of drum and bassy feel. So let me see if I can mute. I won't mute. I have another. Okay, so I had a drum rack here. You can ignore that. That's, I think, I separated my kick and snare from my cymbals so that I could mess with both sets of elements differently. Let me just see what hats are playing. Okay, so this is just the kick and snare I had at first. So see that pattern? So it kind of changes throughout. So we're not just the same drum pattern throughout. So let's listen one more time. Boom bat or boom bat, boom bat, boom bat, boom bat. So same. This one's the same as that. This, whoops, not that. This is the same as this. And then this is where it kind of, or it's actually still the same, but then it's on this 4 and 5 that it's the kind of repeating. And then it finishes, or sorry, it's on the 4 to the 5, not 5 over. And then right at the end here, whoops, I threw in this last kick drum here. So that's kind of just to like bring in the next like measure of MIDI here. So let's take one more listen. It just quickly brings it in. Now, our cymbals are very easy. I think I made a tutorial on how to make kind of easy drum and bass type simple cymbals. I'll just show you guys. So what I like to do, I bring the fade up a bit, fade out a bit. This way it's more like a shaker rather than just a hard-hitting cymbal. I kept this at the negative 12 decibels. The lower hat that I found more abrasive. I faded this one in as well. I don't want all that to begin with. Took the fade, I brought the fade out, so I don't want to get absolutely everything out of it. And I actually brought the volume down so that it sounds like they're kind of moving like in and out, the two of them, and kind of just mess with the dynamics. Cymbal, this ride cymbal, really simple. Just goes all throughout to cover space. It's like just a white noise sample pretty much, but it's a ride cymbal that just plays throughout the whole thing. And now notice that's an element that would sound really good in the loop. I don't bring it in until after some of these drum clips. So my kind of process of doing things here, I made this, then I Control C, I brought it probably over here. These are probably the same clip, honestly, I'm not sure. They're just not consolidated together. And then I just took out all the hats here because I just wanted, I'll bring in the hats later. It's again just bringing in elements, taking out elements. So that's kind of the idea for the drums. Now let's take a look at what I was doing for, okay, so let's take a look at the volumes. So the drum volume seems to be the same throughout, but you might be wondering, okay, well, why did it sound like the drums were different going from here to here? Sound louder, right? Well, the reason for that is probably because, yeah, so it looks like Fab Filter here is being used. So there's a lot easier ways to do this in Fab Filter. You don't need Fab Filter. There's so many auto filters, like one's called like Midnight, or there's so many different filters that you can put on. There's, I don't even know, it's one called Midnight in there and do so much. But honestly, just put a filter on and then automate it. Kind of like a sharp automation here, device on, device off. So it sounds like this, and then move up to So we get into the song, we take that filter off, we want to bring in the full body of the drums. Now one more thing I noticed that I didn't mention about this this Serum instance here. Demouse does something, he doesn't do it as drastically as this right here with like a full bar. He'll usually kind of end it off just here and do this automation, kind of pyramid or slant, whatever you want to call it, diagonal. He will bring the sustain up, or like the decay, one of the two, or actually maybe even both. But with this sound, I wanted to kind of bring it in throughout. So let's actually just take one quick look at our Serum instance, going back here at melody. So macro 3 is the one being moved. So let's see what this controls. The decay, the release, frequency. So all this is doing is bringing in more of those high frequencies, bringing in, just turning up the hyper wet, just to like, I think what I was thinking was that if I had to, or when I listened to it, there was too much. I didn't really want it, but I wanted it just coming in with more like hyper wet, which kind of just makes it larger. And that's just small stuff, but it's good to keep in mind. This technique, this whole like decay, release doesn't even have to be this much. Like this is just for this song, but decay, sustain type automation going into like a different section of a song is really good. And listen to some Deadmau5 songs, you'll see a lot of this stuff has that kind of vibe. Like look at Random Album Title, one of his like older albums, you'll find that kind of stuff everywhere. Album title goes here, you find it all over the place. Okay, so we have our so let's keep going in the song because it looks like we're going to run it to something that's really important here, even though it's one of the last steps in the song that I took. It's part of our lead melody, which I went over earlier. So we'll kind of go into how I. Whoops, what just happened there? So, a really important thing that I've found throughout my time of just making music, listening to music, is that good artists will always introduce what's called like motifs, or like just like simple patterns in MIDI, or in melodies rather. They'll introduce it in multiple parts in the song, keep you familiar with sounds you already, or so you're hearing sounds you're already familiar with. So it brings kind of the intro together with the chorus and like with the outro of a song and stuff like that. So what I have here is just, I'm not sure which part exactly this is. It looks like it's this maybe, or this maybe. It's one of them. Let's see actually. Right there. So this was actually, let's see. Okay, so yeah, it's this. I just changed the MIDI slightly, and that's something that you're gonna find out. Like something sounds good, like you're gonna copy whatever you had here, put it there, and find out you might like it. Um, if you put notes in a bit different order, again, keeping that same motif, that same idea. Uh, so let's count out what we have here. So it was on that 4, 2, 3, 4 that we kind of just played that quick, like, hey, this is what we introed with. This is kind of the lead. Like, keep this in mind. And it's just recycling a part in our song that kind of gives us more depth in other parts of our song without completely flooding it and creating that what we called a really good loop of just stuff that covers every frequency. So. So here, very simple. I actually just took out the drums here. Later on, I don't even take out the drums, but in this case, just took out the drums. Literally, if you just look at this, it's drums one after the other. It just looks like that. That's all. There's nothing special here. It's just a drum buildup. I didn't really do much to it. I could have done more. But again, if you're trying to work on quick, speedy workflow, don't worry about like the levels of that and stuff. Just like put it down. That's your build up. You have some more energy in the song. You don't have to worry about pitching it up until you get to that point. It's kind of just like that's it. Now something to keep in mind when you're working with kind of creating songs, you want to go from like points of low volume, high volume, back to low, like low motion, high energy, low energy. Points of like wet to points of dry. So high energy and then back down. This is kind of like the bridge where I kind of even things out and just like calmed everything down. We just introduced like a really energetic song. But before we go into that, I'll quick just show you guys this part. So these supporting chords sound like this. Okay, so let's see. So if we go to our supporting chords here, let's take a listen to what these sound like. They are these. That's what the MIDI sound or MIDI looks like. starts a bit delayed here. And then it looks like they just cover, so we have these 2 bars of MIDI, 2 bars rest, bars MIDI, 2 bars rest. We don't need to fill the whole thing. We're already filling up all the other slots here and other places in the song. You just need something to chime in every now and then and cover kind of those middle frequencies. Let's see if I put a filter. So that's what they sound like. Let's take a look at the filtering for these. So again, just your basic kind of building up, and then once we're at that build up, we do that hard increase to 1. And then what something I learned along the way is kind of, you'll find that when you want to go into another section of the song, you don't want to totally take out things, especially things that are easy to kind of fade out. And the way I did that, or went about this one, was I hard shifted down in the filters. So I went from, we'll see, it gets lower, the filter goes lower, so the sound gets lower too, but I keep it there. If you're wondering about the notes, I think this was like one of the first few things I made too. This was part of that really good loop that I had with just everything else, the drums and all that. And one thing I'll say is that give this a shot, like introducing just this style of synth where like you skip kind of the first one and then you do kind of a scale like this, or and then look, I did a scale, like I kind of put a little rest here, did some notes, scale down, rest, and then I wanted to hit again, like chime in again, did some notes. Rather than doing a rest here, I wanted to change it up on the second time, so I did and then this kind of has that groove. The C starts kind of before this main line on the 6 here, so it sounds like it's more on its own groove, and kind of gives more swing to the song, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I went about that. Again, brought it in with the full sound here, faded it out by, I didn't have to do much. I don't think I even messed with the master volume of this. Let's see. Yeah, master volume and the mixer volume wasn't even screwed around with. It was really just the filter. I took out so many frequencies, the sound lowered. So let's hear what this sounded like. So we'll start up here. Okay, so 3 things here that we'll go over really quickly. Notice again, we put this little piece in again, just to remind you, we still have that as the main melody. That sound hasn't gone anywhere, still kind of keeping it tied in with the whole theme of the song. So things don't sound too foreign once they're introduced again. Again, it's just a small clip that we put in from our original one. Now let's take a look at the ARP here, the arpeggiator. Really simple to put in, doesn't take really much music theory to figure out. I want to just see what I messed with here. Okay, so it looks like I just messed with the volume slightly, as well as the filter. So I just kind of kept it the same. And then I wanted the higher frequency, so I introduced the ARP at the same point as the drums. You can introduce a few things at once. Introduce the arpeggiator, always good to have. Just covers some ground. Has like a different melody that's like really easy to follow and not too convoluted. And as long as, if you get into the music theory part of it, as long as this on the white notes here, I'm covering like, I'm not going into like, whoops, what am I doing? Clicking all kinds. I'm not going into like any of the sharps or any of that. That would be out of key. Just sticking to the white notes. You might find like some patterns don't sound very great, so you just keep messing with it until you do. And then I just did 1 through 5 or 1 through 4 of this pattern. So I just took let's see, this, not including that, and then I just hit Control D. Whoops, what's happened there? Control D. Okay, that's not. Oh wait, there's one behind it. Whoops. Anyways, I just copied it along the way, and then once I got to the end of 3, you put that first one there, and then you restart like your arpeggiation. I have some different notes here, and I just kind of alternate between the two. Very simple, just 2 sets of arpeggiation. That's what the filtering looks like. Again, taking something from our loop and introducing it with filters, and then having it full-fledged here, bringing in all the frequencies possible. Now going back to what I mentioned about the filtering on this supporting synth here, we fade it out so it sounds really cool when you fade this out. And something I like to do is I'll fade it out, I'll bring it down like kind of that hard drop, fade it out to the point where you almost really can't hear it, but then like bring it back in like this upside down pyramid. And it sounds pretty cool because some people are expecting the sound to go away and it starts creeping back in. And it eventually gets like right here is like, I bet the drums are starting up right there or something. Let's see. Oh, wait, the drums are up here now. Yeah, so the drums are, or no, the drums aren't, oh yeah, no, the drums are starting up right here again. Not the full-fledged drums with the hats, but like the drum, like the kick snare starting up again. So the arpeggiator made it back just in time to come back in with the drums. So we'll pull that down. Okay, so very simple. Looks like this is just really low because we kind of want to leave our synths out of it as the drums are coming back in for our second drop, and then we'll bring them back in here. Let's close that just so you can see more of this. Next big thing here, so we have our bridge. I kind of put the bridge in like the beginning. I don't know, I wanted a different element to start out early on in the song, so let's actually hear this one more time. So this clip's really good because it helps us introduce our drums again. Now just looking at our bridge here, a bit maybe like advanced and maybe not like formulaic and like cookie cutter for me to tell you how to go about this. This is more just like feel. You probably don't need that note. You probably get away with not doing it. But as I listened to it, I think I was like, oh wait, it would sound really good if I had just a note right before all this, and it would just make more sense. So I don't think so. Just started with a note there. You can start with there or not. I would say if you're like looking at this video and trying to replicate everything, I would say start with like just this, so you have everything like even, because it's always very easy to like work with just even sectional parts, or like compartmentalized sections, whatever. And then like playing it and hearing, oh, okay, this note would actually go good right before that whole section there. So this, we went from kind of that, many sounds playing at once back down to a bridge where I wanted kind of a more wet sound, higher pitched, one that could really cover a lot of ground, and evoke kind of this like calm. And now going back to our idea of motifs, so kind of this 1 2 or yeah, so whatever it does, whatever it does, that's the motif there, that just that idea of going 1 2, and we're keeping that throughout this bridge here, and it's a very simple melody. It's not anything crazy. We already have crazy melodies. We don't need to make all kinds of melodies throughout the song. This is just a simple, like, you'll find that you'll have some really complicated melodies in a song, some subtle complicated or like some medium complication in a melody with just like a bit of variation at the end, and then ones that are just very simple with a bit of variation. And then it gets even simpler with just an arpeggiator. So with this, let's take a look. We got through the ARP here, went over how this filtering goes down. We'll bring it back in eventually. Let's take a look at if I... Nope, I don't even think I messed with this. Yeah, so this was just a Serum instance. If you're interested, you want a screenshot, whatever I do with Serum here. Looks like I put a filter on. This was just 11 unison, bass waves, initial waves. I didn't even use a distortion. Hyper, I think just the bass hyper. Reverb, delay, modded delay, it looks like. And yeah, pretty simple. So this is what it sounds like. Oh, there it is. This is still here. So I should actually mention before we get into that, it looks like this, I kept this rhythm going, because this rhythm seemed to actually get drowned out by a lot of other sounds. So I just kept it in there. This bass synth, though, it looks like what happened here was it was pretty powerful. So here, that's what it sounded like. It was like pretty crunchy eventually once you got to that point, because it was a very hype part of the song. So we're getting down to here. I just want the lower end, and really deep, kind of like futuristic Tron type sound. That's all we wanted, because we already have the higher end, and we're not trying to evoke super energy just yet. So that's our bass. We're going to keep it throughout there. So it doesn't look like the bass gets messed with. So this just really comes down to drums at this point. We have these drums filtered, no hats. Kick drum building up again. And now just to make things easy, I literally just copied like these sweeps. Max has a lot of good ones, but they're just two sweeps layered on top of each other. Really simple. And yeah, I kind of just swept out of, let's see, that was 2 like lengths worth here. So I built up with the drums here, and then on this drop, I wanted to just have this supporting synth playing. I just wanted to go like this. More of a lead now, because I brought in all those frequencies right away for this drop. So I took out, probably look like this, or it looked like something. I just deleted the drums, or just deleted the drums there, deleted the arpeggiator, that's irrelevant, deleted the bass. Pretty much just cut everything out here, just so we're focusing only on that synth. And going back to our very good loop, this is just taking everything out and highlighting one key aspect in the song. And you can get away with doing something like this like once in the song, maybe. If you do it like 2 or 3 times, it's like, okay, we get it, like you're doing a drop with just the one channel, like fine. I could get away with it here. So let's listen. Sun's up. Okay, so we have our drop. And now the biggest difference here with this drop is that, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the same, if I remember correctly, it's the same as the last one, but I wanted to go for like more heavy bass sound. Because again, we don't have to make it complicated by introducing a new melody. We don't want to do that. We already have a melody that's stuck in people's heads, and we can just repeat that. So what I did here actually was I put like a supporting bass. I call it like a bass compensator, bass compensation or something. So this actually sounds like this. So let's take a listen. Covers more of that high end, and that sound really, it comes from, well, I mean, Fab Filter part of it, but it's this phaser. I'm telling you, this phaser can do so much. It just adds in like I mean, and also, I mean, I did the filter here, but it just adds in like that really cool, like futuristic vibe that I wanted, along with this bass. So we went from a bass like this, punchy bass, and then we wanted to add in everything else. Just enough to make it sound different on that second one, so when people hear the second drop, it's like, oh, it's the same, but like, and to a person that hasn't produced music, they're gonna be like, oh, whoa, this is like, even though it's slightly different, it's a different drop. All because all you did was add like a bit more to the bass. And now, again, going back to the idea of like, I copy MIDI clips and maybe I didn't take or like copy clip entirely. I don't know. As you can see, like this clip here is a bit different. I'm not sure if a bit different. I don't have those three notes. I'm pretty sure what I did here was I just left this note here rather than have these three because it sounded weird having like this layered on top of that when those three notes are hitting. Like it just sounded like way too much variation. I don't know. You can mess with that. But again, it looks pretty much the same idea. And if you're struggling with just like figuring out you should put three notes or one note, just play it and whatever sounds good. That's a point where you just whatever sounds good, just figure it out and you got it. Sounds good to you, it's good. So again, we really just dropped into the same exact drop. Just added in kind of that bass compensator. So play it out. So, again, we just had those sweeps right here, kind of leading us into it. Again, we literally just repeated that kick drum thing. We have, as if we're restarting the song, we just took what we had in the beginning. Again, going back down to a low part like we did with the bridge. I'll close this real quick. And, what's cool here is that I actually took our lead melody here as if we're restarting the song again, but I made like a different melody this time. Let's listen to this melody because it's actually a bit different than the beginning. Looking straight to chord. So let's actually listen to this. See how this sounded compared to that. Very different in the beginning. The first half of it's very different as well. Very different. One more time. So you see, it does sound kind of the same. Let's take a listen. So the way I went about this was, again, going back to the idea of motifs. I probably literally Control A, copy this all over, and it's like pulling up like the second chapter of a book, pretty much. We have the same sound, the same synth. It's just we have not a totally different melody, just like a different maybe opening to the melody or different timing on the notes in that melody. Probably some different notes. Don't get me wrong. There's probably some different notes in there. There definitely are. But it's like when you hear this, it's like, oh, it's that same sound we heard earlier. It's just like a totally new chapter and something that's totally different. So we're taking to a totally new part of the song. So it's like the emotion and energy that's evoked from it, or invoked from it, whatever it is. So it sounds like this. Same thing, just ramping it up. So this part right here, if we take a look, I kept this in, didn't completely take that out, but as we can see, we kind of had that same idea of deleting things right before, or in that one bar here before the drop. What I did here was I actually kept the bass in. I did a bit more with the supporting synth, because again, we're in that new chapter of the song, so there's going to be some different things on this drop. And I messed with the kind of the melody here a bit too. It's more of like a ballad than simple like na 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 na. It's like na 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 or whatever the melody is. It's more like played out. So I mean, this is really just Serum stuff and sound design, but like I think it kind of looks a bit weird, but I think mod 2 here messes with, that's not what I'm looking for. Oh, okay, you know what? I'm pretty sure it's I mess with like the matrix in here. I'm not gonna get into that, but I pretty much just like mess with the dynamics, like the level. So I brought it back in with that. So again, just adding a little change up on this one rather than taking everything out and playing the same like isolated chord or isolated progression. It's kind of a ballad at this point, this melody, and it plays out. So let's take a listen. With everything back in. Oh, and one more thing. Notice how we also have our bass compensator here too. We already introduced it earlier. People don't want to hear on the second drop a big drop without what we already added to make it huge. Like, we want that bass compensator in there as well because it was hype the first time. So it's going to get more hype on the second drop, and it's going to be a bit different, but we're going to keep that bass compensator in. And you'll find that that's a really easy thing to make your drops sound really cool. From like the first drop on, you can add in just like more sound to your bass, and it already sounds cool. Okay, so we went through that ballad part. Again, this is me just stretching clips out, stretching part of the MIDI out, listening to it, seeing what I like. And again, I actually have a video, guys, on chord progressions and creating melodies with chords. This isn't a great example because I didn't really use chords in this. I used just white keys, but check out that video. It's on my page somewhere. But this is me just stretching notes out, whatever sounds good, adding just more emotion and kind of a different like look at this song. And now you don't want to keep this because again, we don't want to have that really good loop that we play throughout the whole thing. We just want that part that people remember, and then we're going to go back to other things, maybe bring down the energy and stuff like that, because people think about when you're listening to like a really good song or a song that has like a really good part in it, and you're like, man, I wish they had more of that. Like, I listen to this song just for that 2-minute mark because like that drop is like amazing and stuff like that. Well, that's the whole point. Like, if you were to have more of that, it would get old. It wouldn't sound different. You're looking for just that one part because everything around it builds into that subconsciously. So, and look, this is like 2 minutes 40 seconds into the song too, so it takes some time to get to that. But okay, So some neat things that happened here. For the first time, other than just in these drops, we took out the arpeggiator. We didn't just filter it out. We completely took it out because I wanted this to stand out. Our support lead or support synth here. And rather than having the same exact arp, I think this is the same as this, our main like clip. The second one is a bit pitched up in terms of like some of the MIDI notes here are. So let's take a look. This one is D E G. This one is A G D. So we have A in there now, and it's just like kind of, it's like that outro, like this is it kind of melody. We're not going to put the ARP the whole way through because like we want that give and take, and like this is the point where like it's like all or nothing. Like we're like it's gonna go up in terms of like when you go up in notes, like it's more energy, and we're gonna go back down to our bass thing, and then yeah, we're gonna go back up like to our final notes we want to hit, and like that's it. And by having these spaces in between and not just like doing this with these same notes, we're able to like again give and take, like this is our support lead and then back to the ARP, like just to remind you that this has been playing and that this sounds good, back to our support lead, like remind you this has been playing, like it sounds good on its own too. Maybe not for a while, but that's why we're going to bring back our arpeggiator, but this time we're bringing the notes up a bit higher to like really like invoke that energy, back down again, showing that they're both standing out, and then we're finishing it off with higher notes here. So if you want to take a look, these are, looks like I ended, I think these last two notes are a bit wonky or a bit off, I'm not sure, but it ends with C-A-G, it looks like. This is how it ends. We have our clip up there. And that's the outro of the song. A few more notes before this in this video. Before I go into these, again, guys, please be sure to like and subscribe. I always mess up the subscribe part, but please be sure to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. I hope you guys did. I hope it wasn't too long, and I hope that if you guys are still watching, that you got some good info out of this. But a few notes. Again, we brought in that same clip that we've been bringing in the whole time to remind you that that is still part of the song, and like that you were listening to that part of the song at one point. Again, as I mentioned, bringing the energy with this final arpeggio clip. And then as we go out here, so we're doing that thing again where we're going into a lower space by lowering the filter on our bass synth, so we're only getting the really deep frequencies. But the nice thing about that bass compensator that we made is that we're now able to take it out after our big second drop. So now we're taking it out, we're really like invoking like that sense of calm now. Like sure, earlier we did it with just going down in the bass, but after we introduced that bass compensator and really like brought this bass out, when we totally take that, and this is again just taking things out, putting things in, we totally take the bass compensator out on top of lowering the filter on our bass, we're like totally shutting things down. It's like, listen, like this is the end of the song. We're gonna play one more time like our I think this melody is the same as the one in the beginning, not that one. Yeah, it looks like it. So let's round it out here. We'll just play that, and it looks like here we just have and the ending is the easy part. I mean, just finding out how you want to end the song. This part could maybe take some work, but like once you get to the point we're here, it's just like this, like yeah, just take out the rhythm and then just like end it with the melody fading out or something. But let's take a look at what it sounds like. filtered as well. This probably doesn't have to be here. It'll probably be over here, but relevant. And just ends like that. Now, I just want to check one more thing before I let you guys go. So, this is irrelevant, but I just wanted to make sure it was all the same here. Okay, wow. I don't think I missed anything here. The sweeps are self-explanatory, guys. Just quickly, like, when you load in a sweep, say it's like really loud. For what I actually did, I turned this volume down, but what I've learned in like future projects is that okay, so I did it here. If you have things like samples that are really loud, I would say turn them down here first, because when you turn them down there, you can kind of match the sizes up here so that they're like fading in and fading out with like equally sized waves. That's other stuff. So guys, this is like a journey. It's been a long video, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this kind of solves some problems, some questions that people had. And again, if you guys found this helpful, please feel free to like and subscribe. Comment below if there's certain sounds that you want to see be made, or how to make certain sounds. I do have some sound design tutorials on my page, or on my channel. But I will be putting the project file in the description. I haven't done much of exporting with samples, so I'm not sure how to export samples, but I'm sure I can find a way to do that. And if I if I upload the video, you know what I'm gonna do, guys? If anyone sees this, I'm gonna upload whatever. I was gonna say you guys can just comment how to do it, but I'll just look into how to upload the samples as well, so you guys can open the whole project. So yeah, if you like the video, please feel free to like and subscribe. I hope this helped. Thanks, guys. This was Parrot from Genesis Network. Parrot the producer. I'm out, guys. Peace.